This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is a joint subcommittees meeting with the Howard Board of Selectmen Subcommittee and the Finance Subcommittee on the FY 2021 budget and warrant. This is July 28th, 2020 at 5 p.m. It's supposed to start. It's about 5:14 now. And I'll do a roll call vote. Roll call just to see who's here. I know from we have Carol and we have Joe here from administration. On the Board of Selectmen, we have Steve Ford's here.
Yep.
We have Don Howell here.
Yep.
And we have from the Finance Committee, Angelo's here.
Hi.
And we have John Choi here.
Yes.
And Dana DeCosta's here. So we're all here. First item on the agenda, I did send out some minutes. I know that we're supposed to be posted and legal in all that sense, but we also have to record minutes. That's an obligation that we would have. So I put some together and looking for some type of motion.
I didn't see them, Dana.
I sent them in that series that had the question marks, had the minutes there.
Oh, damn. You're scrolling down. Wow. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minute meetings from, what one is it from?
23rd, right?
July 23rd? No, July 10th.
July 10th, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Approve the minute meetings from July 10th, 2020.
Second.
Discussion? Angelo, aye and nay, aye.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana? Aye. So we have minutes. The next item on the agenda, I sent out 2 articles that are in the warrant concerning revolving funds. I thought we should have a quick discussion on revolving funds. And again, certainly this is a policy question that the board's going to have to answer. But in adding up the totals that we have out there right now, it's $1.2 million plus. And didn't know if that's the way we want to continue to operate. Do we want to start moving stuff into budgets? How do we want to deal with revolving funds? And I just thought we'd try and list some pros and cons of general fund versus revolving fund. And I'll let anybody speak first that wants to go.
Dana, it's Don.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to restate. This is my feeling. It isn't necessarily the board's, although we've come close to having a bigger discussion about this. I am dead set against not only the increase of, but even the current level of revolving funds, because everybody, especially in this pandemic, has hunkered down and saying, well, those are our funds. You can't take those. If that were appropriated, we could reallocate if we had to. But we can't do that if it's a revolving fund. And I see us heading towards actually trying to pay for employees with that.
Right.
Because I know Cemetery Commission would probably go in that direction. I am dead set against that because we're all in the same boat. We either float together or we sink together. It wasn't supposed to be for anything other than, as you pointed out, if 2 more teams were populated in rec and youth than they had budgeted for, they had the money to go out and buy jerseys. It wasn't supposed to be a stash.
And golf is up to 250,000. Recreation was up quite high as well, 175.
That's my point.
Steve?
I think I agree with Don on this. I'm not quite as alarmed by it, but I do think that losing control of town revenues especially when we see a crisis like this one, should be concerning to us. So there should be some way that the town administration has the ability to determine the utilization of the funds rather than the way that we have it today.
Dana, this is Angelo. I think this is a very important discussion we're going to have because there are two different kinds of money that is going on with this. We have waterways, water, and golf, and that's all money that has been collected by them to cover their costs. And then we have other general funds that obviously came out of tax money or something like that because the rec department doesn't generate enough money to cover their costs. So I think it's important that that you look at it in two different ways because with waterways and water and golf, if they have more money than they were fortunate and have some more money and they've paid everything they have to pay for, they could easily, without hurting anybody, put forward some money to do something with, put up trees or whatever. But the money coming from the other two of the other departments, I think just should not be there, period. I think everybody.
Dana, can I add one thing to what Angelo's saying? I am not talking about water because that's an enterprise fund. We're talking specifically about these revolving funds.
Okay, so you pull water out, but it's the same kind of fund. It's handled differently. It's money that comes in through fees and covers the cost of the operation.
Right.
Okay.
John? Go ahead, Angelo. Finish up. Yep.
No, okay, John.
Then what was you was it 1.2 million? You said the limit or something. What was the number?
No, if you just add what's being authorized in Article, this is Article 37 in the draft warrant that Joe put out last week. It's 1,224,500 is what's being authorized, and another article before this one asked to actually add some more things on there. But you look at the bottom one is Pet Cemetery. I don't know if we need a revolving fund for that anymore, but
but you said, was it 1 point? How much what was the limit? The aggregate number?
I don't think there's a limit.
It's about 1.2. It's about 1.2.
Okay, so that's what the limit is. But what is the actual revolving funds total there? Because I know one particular fund, the Cultural Center, has close to, I think, Carol, $300,000 in it.
Yes, I agree.
So what I'd like to see, do you know what the total revenue, total revolving funds is? And you got a limit of 1.2, but I think there might be more than 1.2 million in those buckets.
So what you see here on this draft article, first, the pet burial ground, that was never authorized as a revolving fund. So we can just take that one right off there. The other ones, so these are spending limits. So what this says is on an annual basis, you can only spend for the pro shop, the golf pro shop and restaurant up to $250,000. You can take in as much money as you want, but you can only spend $250,000. And then there's a bylaw, I believe a bylaw that would tell you exactly what you can take the money in for and how you can spend that money. So with the recreation one runs programs for all the different seasons of the year, and they take in fees associated with running those programs, and they can only spend the money on those programs that they're offering through the rec department. So some of these funds, you'll see that they generate balances and they continue to grow. And some of the other ones like recreation, whatever they take in, they're expending. And so you see a very minimal amount at the end of the fiscal year. But we certainly have those balances. I think I provided them in your budget book as well. that big budget book, there's a section in there that talks about revolving funds and what the estimated balances were going to be at the end of June. Now, those are certainly will change now because obviously we couldn't hold rec programs like we were planning to and things like that of that nature. But certainly will get you updated numbers quickly.
Now,
Hey,
Carol,
Carol,
That was
Steve
just
Ford,
balances were. Yeah.
Yeah, but before we get off this subject, this is Don again. That's not the problem. I mean, the biggest problem is that what you've allowed to happen is instead of people who are subject to a hierarchical structure of approvals, you're allowing volunteers who are on committees to vote, yeah, let's go ahead and buy those uniforms, or yeah, let's go ahead and do this in the cemetery. And as long as it's within the confines of the purpose, Carol, you're going to agree to it, but there isn't a staff person who's actually doing it for the most part. The approval process is committee members, all of whom are volunteers. No one elected them.
Carol, does any of this money that is in any of these balances, none of this ever hits the general fund, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
And only because I know the recreation part the best. I was chairman of that committee way a long time ago, and had to put it all through the budget. We never had a revolving fund. We budgeted each year for all these programs. When that money comes in for those programs, that's all they can spend it on, but they're not covering anything to do with overhead at all. They're not covering preparation of any of the spaces they use or anything like that, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's one of the problems that I have with it, and as Dawn clearly said, I have a major problem and would vote down Article 36 at this point, or recommend that, to add people into the mix. And I'm sure there's probably already people being paid from these things now. And the more I learn about it, the more scared I get of it. I know that we're going to run out of time, and I want to get this started, but we eventually should come back to the board with a recommendation, and maybe we start thinking about this year where some programs aren't going to be run and some things aren't going to be done, that we take the time to look at some of these, and maybe we have a lower authorization number for this year. And that would give us until next year to really figure some of these out. As we said, maybe Pet Cemetery can come right off there. Maybe something else can happen in those ways.
Dana, this is Steve Ford, but when you say lower authorization number, are you, and I wanted to ask Carol this as well. Carol, for each of these departments, there is a authorized amount to be able to be expended in any one given year. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is it the same for each, or is it specific to each department?
It's specific to each revolving fund. So it all depends on the activity in the fund. And so a department head would come forward and ask either to have the spending limit increased, which is typical, or they could ask for it to be decreased as well. And that's how these spending limits on the article that the sample article that you were provided, and that's how those have, how that comes to be. And the town is required to authorize those spending limits on an annual basis.
Okay. Thank you.
So I guess the exercise, I mean, we're going to have to talk about this again, but I would say that our first message is that none of us, at least at this level, seem to be too happy with this form of doing things, and seeing what that would mean from a budget point of view, and having funds go into the general fund and budgeting for this would have to be a future step, and what we can do about it this year would have to be a future step. But I think if we do our homework, we should be able to come up with a recommendation to our full boards saying this is what we're thinking.
Can I just add something
Anyone?
to the conversation?
Sure.
Yep.
So for a town the size of Harwich, this is an excessive amount of revolving funds. Typically, you'd see, you know, maybe up to 5, more like 3 or 4 for a size of the town's budget. And I do understand it's a, you know, it's a coastal community and you may have other needs, but that still is an excessive number here.
And it's grown up in the last 5 to 7 years, right? I mean, we didn't have these 10 years ago.
Yes, you're right.
Right.
All right. I'll try to put together an action item based on this and send it out to people, and maybe we can do some stuff between now and our next get together, and we'll start approaching some sort of recommendation. Does that seem like a way to go?
Sure.
Because
I'm
I
good
don't
with
think
that.
we can spend all night on this. I just wanted to introduce it and get it started and see if we were of like meaning here, and hopefully can work on our full boards to pull in a certain direction. So we'll do it. We'll do that way, unless anybody has anything else on revolving funds.
Dana, it's Joe. The only question I have, I'm looking at both the printed version and the online version. Were there any changes made in May of 2019? Because what I'm assuming is what I had on the draft warrant was that a carryover from last year as a placeholder, or is that an updated, does anyone know if that's an updated article?
I don't think it's up to date, only because the Pet Cemetery.
Say again?
I don't think it's up to date, only because the Pet Cemetery burial ground's on there as a revolving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
So
and
I
I
can-
don't think, it says an FY20 spending limit, and that would have had to have been a 21 spending limit.
Right. So it probably is the placeholder that we want, because we have to do it annually. But I think maybe possibly between now and then we figure out whether we want to go forward with these full amounts, and whether we can have some items put into budgets, and maybe money go into the general fund for some of the activities. Some of these activities have to be repeat activities that go on every year that could be budgeted. That's the way we used to do it. It was a very simple kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, so that's where we are on that one. Next item on the agenda is to discuss the changes in the capital plan. I've already discussed this with the full finance committee at one our meeting last Thursday. Basically, what I did as an exercise is I took the last capital plan that we passed, which is the 3-sheet document that I sent you, the 3 pages printed landscape style. And then I tried to take the new rules of the capital plan and produce what that means right now. And I came up with a document. And then where we are right now with the capital plan by taking the original 6 years and adding the new year to it. And I sent you that as well. And as I told the finance committee, this was just to get the discussion going. And we'll talk about what's in the document, but I'm really interested in us trying to agree on a procedure going forward in terms of the upcoming town meeting. And the reason I say that is because the finance committee has to have a public hearing on the capital plan, and we generally like to do that before the warrant goes to print, which means sometime next week, like Monday, a week from Monday, I'll have to have information into administration's office to get the ads set, to give everybody notice of a public hearing in time for all of this to happen. So I have about a week to have something ready for to go out to notice a public hearing, and then we've got very little time to act on it after that. And I'll go back
Dana.
to yes.
Dana, it's Don again.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm opining here because the bylaw that got changed, the charter that got changed, that article, I started when I was chair of the committee, and then moved over to the Board of Selectmen. I'm just wondering why we're even attempting anything beyond 21, because if you do this, first of all, the town administrator by charter is supposed to be the one submitting it to you, or the capital outlay committee, and not, so that's problematic right now. With 1/4 of the year in, why are we trying to create years 2 through 7, on the fly here with almost no time, when we could easily defer that until May? Because if you do this has already been voted on at the ballot box. It's already passed town meeting. It's already passed the Attorney General's office. You're going to be locked in. You're not going to be able to change this except by a 2/3 vote if you do this.
Right, and which is why I wanted to talk about the procedure. In the past, Don, you will remember, the Finance Committee used to get up each year and just move to accept and adopt the capital plan, plain and simple. And they used to have...
because you're only adding a 7th year, that's why.
Right. And they used to accept and adopt that. And then the Board of Selectmen would either agree with that or they would make their changes. They would amend the capital plan by either rewriting the entire thing and saying, no, we prefer this version, or they would make a few changes and make that into a motion, but they would amend the original motion, and that amendment would be debated, and then that amendment would either pass or fail, and then the new plan would be as amended, and that would again take a simple majority to pass.
That is not possible
It's just
now.
a procedural way of doing it.
That is not possible. It was possible for 6 years when it was really a capital budget. It is not possible with the wording that got passed at town meeting last year. You are locked into all but the last year. If you need anything that needs to go from years 1 through 6 that wasn't on it at all, you need a 2/3 vote to actually make that, to effectuate that.
Right. I understand that.
So it can't be a simple majority, and it can't be an amended version. It has to, anything but the year that you're voting on has to take a 2/3 vote if you're moving anything. That's why I'm not sure why you'd want to do this. You're putting this in concrete.
Well, what capital plan should we, I mean, you are planning in September to have an FY 2021 capital plan, are you not?
I'm 2 steps away from that. That question should be directed to Joe because he's supposed to be the promulgator.
I understand that, but the Finance Committee still has got to vote on a plan. And we don't
I get that, but they don't get to create the plan. My point is that I don't think you've got time to do anything but 1 year because this is a brand new process. It's reverting back to what it was 10 years ago.
I don't think we created the plan. I think the plan was already created in 2019 at the May town meeting.
Not under the current rules.
Right, so if you adopt the current rules and adjust the plan accordingly, you come up with a 1-sheet plan.
A 1-sheet plan which can't be moved ever until you get a 2/3 vote. You can't move anything out of any year. You can only add a 7th year.
You can move them out of a year with a 2/3 vote.
Yeah. My point is, do you think you've got enough, does Joe have enough time to give you something for you to act on for us to be sure that that's what we want to lock in for 7 years? You could have changed anything through the last 7 or 8 years because the rules were that every year was a new year.
Well, Joe's in the room. Maybe he would like to comment.
So the problem as I see it relates to, to 2 things. First of all, the original timeline for all of this is that we would have adjourned a town meeting in early May, had adopted our appropriations, operating budgets, capital, community preservation, and everything, and then after would be a town election, so that the net effect of this charter change would have impacted upon the fiscal year 22 capital outlay plan and capital budget.
Right.
Given that we had a town election on June 30th and these questions passed, the charter changes are now in effect, and none of us, meaning Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, or the town generally, have talked about what was the intended effect of this now that we have to do it far sooner than was ever expected.
That was my point. Do we really want to go into all these out years, or do we want to stay focused on the 1 year that's in front of us?
Excuse me, but all the out years had been voted in.
Not on the current system, they weren't.
Yeah, but what you're doing is you're, on the current system, was there writing, and I don't remember reading it, that the current plans would be eliminated? And it's starting all over again?
Yeah.
Did that
I
say
don't
it?
interpret it that way, Don. I don't interpret it that way.
It's not that way.
Well, I helped write it, so all I can tell you is what the intent was to get rid of the malarkey of fiscal 24 all of a sudden next year becoming fiscal 22 with just a regular majority vote. That can't happen anymore. We have to construct a solid, non-movable without a 2/3 margin. We did not adopt under the current rules. We never adopted the 7-year plan. Every year was a new year with the old. The other thing was not a capital plan anyway. It was a capital budget.
Right.
So what was the intended effect of the amendment by adding language to 952 to say that the Capital Outlay Committee shall assist the town administrator in the development of the capital outlay plan to be adopted and or amended each year at the annual town meeting, and may, at the request of the town administrator and or the Board of Selectmen, assist the town administrator in the preparation of a capital outlay budget. So what was meant by to be adopted? Because in parliamentary parlance, to be adopted means a new thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
And or amended means to change something that was already done. So
that language was left in there to afford for durability in the future, because once you do have all 7 years and or amended kicks in, but we don't have that yet.
Is it the intent of 952 that a capital outlay plan be adopted? Inference being there's a de novo plan going forward. Or was the intent to simply modify previous attempts? And last question for everybody, who's authorized to answer that interpretation?
Not me.
Well, as the former chair of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, I can tell you that our intent was there was no capital plan at all, only 1 year at a time. Every year was a new year, and anything was for grabs in that year. This was an attempt to bring it back to some sort of coherent process, which started with the town administrator, assisted by a capital outlay committee, sent to FinCom, and then if the Board of Selectmen agreed with FinCom, the Board of Selectmen agreed. Otherwise, it went to town meeting with 2 different versions, but it would have taken a 2/3 vote once we got into it. The problem is you're going to have to construct 7 years at the same time. My point is, this is a really odd circumstance. We've blown through a quarter of the year. We don't have a heck of a lot of time, and do you really want to be bound by something that you're codifying right now that's going to be memorialized in concrete? It's not going to it won't get moved anymore. You're going to have a 2/3 vote on anything. Wouldn't you rather have the...
I think you can get a 2/3 vote when people understand what we're doing. I think if we explain it well at town meeting and say that this is what we ended up with after the vote, and we need to change that because we're not going to ask you to fund $7.3 million this year. We have to adjust it. So on page 1 is the capital plan as it exists, and on page 2 is the selectmen's new capital plan, and that gives us a few months to put one together. But
yeah, why would we focus on anything but 21 in that case?
Well, what are you putting forward for 21? We don't have a capital plan or a warrant yet. Are you putting in funding articles for all the things in 21?
I am only a me. I am not a we.
Right.
We don't have a position as a board right now, but I'm going to argue in favor of what I'm saying here, is that it's gratuitous to put anything more than the first year in because you can't put any thought into the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh years. We're going to have to slap it together.
See, I disagree with that fundamental basis. I disagree saying that we voted a plan in FY 2020, and we have to vote a new version of the plan in FY 2021. I think we have a capital plan.
I disagree because there was nothing stopping you from changing it in completely and substituting it in totality in any given year, which is why we made the change back to the old system.
So obviously, administration's got to do some research on this to try and move forward at all. Maybe get some input from town council, I would imagine. But certainly, we're not going to solve this tonight in the next 7 minutes or so. So I would recommend that we wait to hear back from Joe in terms of what he can find out about where we are right now. Once we establish where we are, I think we can then easily move forward. But
before Joe does that, I would pitch that part of this is legal interpretation and part of this is policy. So the Board of Selectmen also needs to talk about what they want to do about it. There's
right.
what you can do and there's what you have to do. And before the legal counsel's brought in, I want to be able to determine which is which.
Right. I'll just say that I hope your board interprets it different than you do. I mean.
Well, you got a 4/5 chance of that.
All right. So we're going to leave it alone. We're going to leave this in your beautiful courts until we get some clarification. I just know that in terms of us trying to have a public hearing prior to going to print, looks like it may not happen, but that's okay too. We'll do something.
So this topic will be added to the board's agenda for Monday, August 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Excuse me
Sure.
for 1 second. Yeah, it strikes me that there are a lot of people there who voted for those things that are currently in the meeting, and that there are a lot of departments that fought to get them approved. I think if we just eliminate them in the air, there's going to be a lot of issues. Unless there are words in the thing that was just currently voted, that if you vote for this plan, everything else is going to be destroyed and we're starting over again. In those words or so, I think it's going to be a very difficult project. Sorry.
I know what you mean, Ed.
Anna, can I just add,
I'm not pitching to zero it out. I'm just saying that I don't see the need to populate the other years until we can get to a real town meeting in a May timeframe where we're not all sitting outside 6 feet away from each other.
That sounds like zeroing it out to me. No matter what we do, when we vote in September, in the next 6 months, we'll be putting the next warrant to bed by March. So we're going to have a quick bite of this apple now and a bigger bite of it 6 months after that. So it's going to come up again real quick, the 2022 plan.
actually, not correct, but the plan is still due to the board and the finance committee by the end of December. So that next capital plan will be developed in 3 months.
Or less.
And I don't disagree with what you said, Angelo. My only concern is, you know, looking at the article that started this last year, the Finance Committee recommends that this article be accepted and adopted to revert the 7-year plan back to a 5-year plan. And so that was the intent, but none of that
happened.
Right. So there's far too much ambiguity to give me any kind of confidence right now. But like I said, it will be debated again more vigorously Monday evening, perhaps.
All right.
I can say that the plan that the Attorney General reviewed was 7, year language. That's what got approved.
Right,
Right.
we had discussed the 5, and that was going in prior to the warrant being printed. After the warrant was printed in some sort of compromise, the 5 went out and the 7 came in back again. So that was
That was the motion.
right. Yes. Okay, we're going to move on from this one. Under old business, the only thing I really had was I put together an attempt to write an article for the use of stabilization funds over the operating budget. Since then, and all I did was just try to write something to say that the explanation is more important than the article in this case. But it turns out, depending on what the board wants to do, according to the memo that Carol just sent, the Board of Selectmen can vote to move money from the the stabilization fund to the general fund now without town meeting or anything. I don't recommend that, but at least in terms of trying to come up with a specific for the Board of Selectmen, I think there should be an article. I think it should be placed in the warrant prior to the budgets, and I think we should have it there and only use it if we need it, but we need to have it there. If we don't have it there, I think it causes more problems than not. So that was my attempt to write an article.
I got to say, Dana, we haven't actually discussed it in that kind of detail. I mean, if that's what you want to do to start a discussion at the board level, that's good. But I mean, in terms of the warrant, it's our warrant, and there has to be some agreement that we're putting it in there and that we're going to allow town meeting to, to disperse or not disperse.
Right. I would fully love to have it in there and then indefinitely postpone it, because that means we didn't need it. But I would also hate to be at town meeting without it if we do need it.
Well, why don't we, Dan and Don and I run that by the other board members right away here so we can get an answer back to you.
Right.
That's what I was aiming at.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote it, just to, from what I'm gathering from your board meetings, especially through your chairman, he's looking for more concrete kind of stuff from us. So I'm throwing spaghetti against the wall, trying to get some stuff to stick.
No, Dana, and we appreciate it, as I said earlier, the work that went into writing the background, and I would agree with you that the background is the important component here, how it's laid out for the people of the town. And having that option available is probably a smart thing to do. So we'll, even putting aside what Carol provided us, which was great, that she sent us to give us more insight into what our abilities are in this rather unusual time that we're in.
Don, anything on that?
Oh, I agree with Steve. I mean, we got to bring it back. I don't speak for the whole board. I mean, we got to see whether they want to put it's the selectmen's warrant, so we got to see whether they are willing to add that to it.
Yeah, and just I know I said it right at the very first time we met, but that's clear to the members of the finance committee all the way through this. We're just up against a calendar crunch and need to. We don't have a warrant yet. We don't have a capital plan, and we got to take a lot of votes before we go to print. So we're just trying to move it. We know it's your responsibility, but the sense I'm getting is that rather than just identify all the things that you have to do, your chairman seems to be looking for, and the board members seem to be looking for, put something in front of us that tells us what we could do, and then either throw up on that or change it or fix it or do whatever. So that's
the most important part.
Dana,
go ahead.
The most important part of it was a dollar sign with no figure behind it.
Well, that's the way all articles are written until there's an amount to go in there.
I know, but I think that's what Larry's looking for is where are you, Is it bigger than a bread box? Is it smaller than an airplane? I mean, he's trying to get an idea of how much you were looking to try to take from stabilization.
Right, but I don't think we know that at this point, and I do think it's we will present, Dana, this wording and the background on the wording as a proposal to the selectmen, and come back to you quickly with an answer as to sort of where the sense is on doing this, not doing this, doing this in the written fashion that you have, or perhaps amending it. I do understand, that the time frame is very short, and we need to come back quickly. You're right that Larry is looking for specifics out of us. So you're correct in asking us to make sure that we take what you proposed here and see if we can't get an answer quickly on this specifically, as well as, what we talked about on the revolving funds and the capital plan as well.
All right, we're out of time here, folks, and I think I'll send you the Word document itself so that if you want to edit it or delete all, you can. But you'll have at least a page that has what I've written to work.
You send that to Joe?
With an edit. Anything else from anybody before we adjourn?
Just one quickie. We need to get,
Joe?
we need to get from the Board of Selectmen the total tax budget that's in there and the total loss of dollars that we'll have or problems we have. Because we really can't even vote on the plan because of all the changes that have to be made in it. It's
All right, and I can follow up with you, Angelo.
about 80 times on it.
I'll follow up with you, Angelo, outside of this because we have a lot of those numbers now.
Yeah, we do.
I
Joe?
just want to say the summary thought, Dana. We gave up the idea of bi-weekly meetings, and we've actually talked about supplementing within a week. So we're not trying to dodge this. We're meeting every week, and we may meet more than once a week.
Yep, I understand. Joe?
I'm just asking for a definitive next date for this group.
Actually, I would take any recommendation you had on what we have for scheduling availability. It is tougher to do this way. If we could be in any room together, it would help. I don't mind a virtual meeting, but any room together would just help. If you could come back with a recommendation, I'll make sure. I mean, you can do the posting and everything.
Well, I can do the credentials for a remote. The problem, as we discovered tonight, is there are other boards that are already set up to be broadcast live.
Right.
So that's what's impacting on our ability.
All right, so I'll talk with you offline about that and we'll set up a meeting. All right?
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody? John?
Yeah, thank you for everything, Dana.
John?
I'm fine, thank you. Good.
Steve, last word?
I'm good, thanks.
I move that we are adjourned. We are adjourned.
Second.
Good.
Second.
I
Thank
make
you.
the same motion to Mr.
Anybody
Ford.
that doesn't vote to can stay.